as you know, over the last year and a half or so, uh, the world at large has been facing what I would say a multitude of crises and challenges. Obviously, the impact of the pandemic worldwide, financial and economic crisis across the globe, with hundreds of millions of people either unemployed or underemployed, and billions of people feeling financially insecure. In essence, how will I take care of myself, or how will I take care of my family? A lot of insecurity that way. We have the social and political and racial strife in the streets. But one of the most uh, profound crises I think that the world is facing right now is the mental health crisis. Where we, according to the United Nations, we have a couple of billion people suffering from depression, anxiety, and stress. Mind you, these are people that did not have pre-existing conditions. And those statistics really are from last November. So I think those numbers are way underreported. As a matter of fact, I don't know anyone that hasn't been impacted one way or another. So those are four major global crises. Now, we're not adding to this people's personal crisis, right? Perhaps going through a divorce or a separation, a relationship breakup, or a child going astray, or death in the family, or taking care of an older parent who might have dementia or Alzheimer's. We're not even counting those. So human beings are very resilient. We can really handle one or two crises at the same time. We've done it before, throughout our lifetime, and that's how we survive and we grow and so on. But when you have four, five, six, or seven crises at the same time, that's really, really difficult to maintain your happiness levels, your wellness levels, and so on. So we may not all be in the same boat because our circumstances are different, but we are certainly all in the same storm. And I wrote a book during the pandemic called The Seven Keys to Navigating a Crisis, really talking about how can we be successful even in the midst of so much adversity. I sort of claim that we're all graduates from the same university, the University of Adversity, all of us. And the older we get, the higher the degree, right? The more setbacks we have in life, and human weaknesses, and the impact that life has on us, losing loved ones, perhaps unemployment, relationships issues, and so on. So how can we manage those? And what I have found is that when facing any challenge or crisis, there are typically four personality types. And the first one we like to call the victim. The victim basically is, why is this happening to me? Like, poor me. Like, as if it's only happening to me and not the other 7 billion people in this world, right? So that's number one. The second one we like to call the critic. Now, the critic will criticize anything and everyone. For this is a silly example, of course. And regardless of what the United Nations or the World Health Organization says, or the federal, state, or local government, doesn't matter what they criticize everything. For example, Elia, you should wear a mask when you go outside. Well, that's stupid. Okay, never wear a mask when you go outside. What are you trying to do, kill me? Like, no matter what happens, they're critical of everything that happens. Then we get to the third personality type, which we like to call the bystander. Mind you, a good person, a decent person, but the bystander is, think of it, the deer with the headlights look, meaning they're so overwhelmed by all the changes that are taking place that they're frozen in fear, they're petrified. And what all three of these personality types have in common, of course, is that they offer no solution. They don't move the needle forward to some kind of positive outcome. Now we get to the fourth personality type, which we like to call the navigator. And the navigator, of course, begins with practicing great self-care, which I know we're going to talk about love later on, how important that is, love of God, self, and others, right? That self part is vitally important, practicing self-care. And they're kind as a result of that because their batteries are full. They're able to extend that kind of love to those around them. But one of the key, they have a positive attitude, meaning that this too shall pass. We may be down on one knee and getting our butts kicked. That's for sure. For the last year and a half, it hasn't been easy, but we will survive this and we will move forward. But what I consider the most crucial ingredient has to do with flexibility and adaptability and resilience. So what does that look like? So I use the parable or the story of the oak tree and the palm tree. Now, the oak tree is this massive, huge, 100 feet high, powerful, majestic tree, beautiful. But at the height of the storm, if there's enough saturation on the ground and then enough wind, what typically happens to oak trees? they come crashing down on people, cars, homes, and so on. That's what happens. Any hurricane, you see, they're big oak trees that come down. On the flip side, the palm tree, and the palm tree is relatively thin, kind of beautiful at the top. I mean, it's beautiful at the top of the storm. And now I really want you to think about the storms of life. At the top of the storm, the palm tree bends, and at some point it bends parallel to the ground at the very peak of the storm, 200 miles an hour. But when the storm passes, what happens to the palm tree? It rises up again and it survives the storm. And not only that, it's actually stronger because why? Because its roots have had to dig in deeper to hold on for dear life. So now the question to you is, will you be a palm tree or an oak tree? And as I've shared this, story with thousands of people across the globe over the last year and a half, people have asked me back, like, Dr. Elia, that's a cute story. I'll remember that. I want to be a palm tree too. That's kind of delightful. But what does an oak tree sound like or look like in human terms? So this is what an oak tree sounds like for us as human beings. Well, this is the way I've done things for the last 40 years. I'm not going to change now. This is who I am. If that's the approach to life, then I'm afraid we're going to have problems. We need to be flexible, adaptable, and resilient. Now, getting back to the storms of life, in the New Testament, we have this wonderful story where the Savior, being tired, enters the boat and goes out with the disciples in the middle of the Sea of Galilee and takes a nap, which I think is wonderful to see. Even he needed to practice self-care. He was inundated by people wanting something from him, draining from his energy, and he goes, time out, I need to take a nap. So he goes on the boat and actually takes a physical nap. But what happens during that time? There's a storm coming, right? And the storm, of course, this is symbolic. And I've been to the Sea of Galilee, and I hear from the locals actually that when it storms there, it's an actual storm. I know it's not the ocean, but it's when we went, it was perfectly calm, and I couldn't even imagine being stormy. Beautiful, the Sea of Galilee. So what happens to his disciples? They have a full-blown panic attack. If I'm wearing my psychologist hat right now, I'm like, okay, Peter, you just have a panic attack. You may need some Xanax. They have a panic attack. And what happens to them? They wake him up, right? And he comes up. And the first thing, of course, he does is, he calms the elements in his remarkable power, which astonishes them. And they're like, wow, what manner of man is this that even the elements listen to him? But then comes the biggest lesson of them all. He turns to them and he says, really? Really? You've been with me all this time. Did you really think that I was going to let you drown? For I am in your midst. Now that story, bring it back to our own personal storms of life. Again, whether it's a separation, a divorce, financial troubles, difficulties with kids, older parents, death is all around us. I mean, these are like real things. We are in a very big storm. Now the question is, how do we go through the storm? Alone or with a Savior in the boat? Meaning that he always has our back. And I share this with you, on a very personal note. Last week, we lost my mom-in-law, who was like a second mom to me. She died in her sleep. So we're in a major storm right now as a family. Certainly, of course, with my wife and my sister-in-law and my kids. This was their only surviving grandparent that passed away. It's a major storm in our family right now. Initially, when you're shocked from a sudden death, and I felt like I was one of the disciples, panicking, overwhelmed, the grief, the tears, trying to be a husband and a father and a friend and a grief counselor to my family, and trying to get things organized and take care of my kids and fly them in and do all that stuff. And I got overwhelmed, and I was empty. You know why? Because I forgot that the Savior has my back. I was trying to do it by myself. And I'm used to that. Everybody comes to Dr. Elia. I've done this for 35 years. Everybody comes I take care of everybody. And guess what? In my time of crisis, I couldn't do it. I literally and physically could not do it. And it wasn't until I got down on my knees, I'm like, you know what? I need your help now. I need you to be on this boat. So I share this with you because I think it's human nature for us to forget sometimes and to try to do it on our own, especially people that are like successful and doers and we get things done. We run so fast sometimes and we forget the most vital part, right? That he loves us and he's right there with us. So you may be in a storm right now as we speak, and I'm not even talking about the pandemic storm. You may be in a personal storm right now. If this is just a gentle and loving reminder, you can go through the storm by yourself. That's up to you. We all have our free agency. Or you can invite him to lift a little bit of that weight. I can tell you the first couple of days when I had totally forgotten him, I didn't even pray. I was like so much like overwhelmed. I didn't pray. I didn't do anything until I finally broke down. And I'm like, I can't, how are we going to make it through the celebration of life and so on? I can't do this by myself. And I had to pull back a little bit and get quiet, which is one of the other keys of the navigating a crisis is to get quiet, awareness, listen to that still small voice. And more importantly, act upon what you hear. This is one of the few absolutes in my own personal life. I download stuff all the time on a daily basis. I've done that for 30 years since I joined the gospel of Jesus Christ. I download it. It comes easy to me too. Every time I've downloaded and I've acted upon it, it's always worked out. And that's an absolute. However, because I'm not a perfect human being, right? There have been plenty of times where I've downloaded stuff and then I've ignored it. Well, guess what happens when you ignore that still small voice? I've always paid the price for it. So I guess what I'm saying is remember that he's in our midst. We don't have to go through the storms of life by ourselves, but we need to stay close to him and let him carry that weight because he has endured all things. He knows what grief looks like. And even when your heart's breaking, and you kind of feel like I can't go on anymore, like one more day. Yes, you can if he's right there with you. So invite him in. Those are my thoughts for today. Stay resilient, stay flexible, be adaptable, be a palm tree. And thank you for your time. And I love this organization, Get Real. I mean, it speaks to me. God bless y'all. Thank you.